The desert heat pressed down like a heavy blanket as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her scope for the third time in 10 minutes. The small forward operating base sat in a valley surrounded by rocky hills that provided perfect cover for enemy fighters. She had been deployed to Afghanistan for 8 months now, and every day felt like a chess game where the other side knew all her moves. Maria was not supposed to be here. As a female soldier, official policy kept her away from direct combat roles. But the reality on the ground was different from what the papers said back home. When bullets started flying, nobody cared about gender policies. They cared about who could shoot straight and who would stand their ground. The Navy SEALs had arrived 3 days ago for a classified operation. Maria knew better than to ask questions about their mission, but she could see the tension in their faces. These were some of the most elite warriors in the American military, and even they looked worried. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, the SEAL team leader, had briefly acknowledged her presence when they first met. His eyes had lingered on her sniper rifle and the collection of mission patches on her uniform. She had earned those patches the hard way, through long nights watching empty roads and split-second decisions that meant the difference between life and death for her fellow soldiers. The base housed about 40 American personnel along with a small group of Afghan National Army soldiers. The surrounding area had been relatively quiet for 2 weeks, which made everyone nervous. In this part of Afghanistan, quiet usually meant something bad was coming. Maria's position was on the western watchtower, a concrete structure that gave her a clear view of the approaches to the base. Her Barrett M82 rifle was zeroed perfectly, and she had enough ammunition to hold off a small army. The weapon was almost as tall as she was and kicked like an angry mule, but in her hands it became an instrument of precise lethality. She had grown up in a small Texas town where her father taught her to hunt deer in the early morning mist. Those skills had translated well to military service, though the stakes were considerably higher now. Instead of deer, she hunted people who wanted to kill her friends and fellow soldiers. The radio crackled to life in her earpiece. All stations, this is base. We have movement on the ridgelines. Multiple heat signatures. Stay alert. Maria immediately began scanning the hills through her scope. The late afternoon sun created shadows between the rocks, perfect hiding places for enemy fighters. She controlled her breathing and methodically searched each possible position. Through her scope, she caught a glint of light reflecting off metal. Someone was up there with a weapon, and they were watching the base. She keyed her radio. Tower 1 to base. I have possible sniper position, 2 o'clock from my location, approximately 800 meters. Base copies. Keep eyes on. The SEALs were preparing for their mission departure. Maria could see them checking equipment and loading vehicles in the compound below. Whatever they were planning, it was happening tonight. As the sun began to set, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and red, Maria noticed more movement in the hills. This was not normal patrol activity. Too many people were moving in coordinated patterns. Her combat instincts, honed through months of dangerous deployments, were screaming warnings. She reached for her radio again. Tower 1 to base. I count at least 12 heat signatures in the surrounding hills. This looks like preparation for an attack. Roger that, Tower 1. Continue observation. The temperature began to drop as darkness approached. Maria put on her night vision equipment and continued her watch. In the green-tinted world of thermal imaging, she could see human shapes moving closer to the base perimeter. Down in the compound, the SEALs were having a final briefing. She could see Lieutenant Commander Morrison pointing at a map while his team gathered around. These men were legends, warriors who had fought in the most dangerous places on Earth. But even legends could be caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. At 2,100 hours, her radio came alive with urgent chatter. Base, this is SEAL Team Leader. We are moving to target. ETA to objective is 30 minutes. Base copies. Good hunting. Maria watched the SEAL vehicles disappear into the darkness beyond the base gates. The night became eerily quiet except for the distant sound of insects and the occasional mechanical noise from the base generators. 20 minutes later, her world exploded into chaos. The first shot came from the northern ridge, a sharp crack that echoed off the surrounding hills. Then came more shots, dozens of them, all aimed at the base. Muzzle flashes lit up the darkness like deadly fireflies. Contact! Contact! We are under attack. The radio filled with urgent voices as the base defenders scrambled to respond. Maria immediately began searching for targets. Through her night vision scope, she could see at least 20 enemy fighters positioned on multiple ridgelines around the base. They had achieved the tactical advantage of high ground and were pouring accurate fire into the compound below. The base's defensive positions returned fire, but the attackers were well concealed and difficult to hit. Tracer rounds lit up the night sky as both sides exchanged deadly bursts of ammunition. Then, Maria's radio crackled with a transmission that made her blood run cold. It was Lieutenant Commander Morrison's voice, but the usual calm confidence was replaced by urgent concern. Base, this is SEAL Team Leader. We are in contact. Heavy enemy presence. Request immediate support. The response from base was not encouraging. SEAL Team Leader, we are under heavy attack ourselves. Cannot provide support at this time. Maria could hear the frustration in Morrison's voice when he replied. Understood, base. We are surrounded by snipers. I repeat, we are surrounded by enemy snipers. Through her scope, Maria could see the SEAL team's position about 2 kilometers away. They had taken cover behind some large rocks, but muzzle flashes from the hills around them showed they were indeed surrounded. The elite warriors were trapped, and the base was too busy defending itself to send help. The radio chatter continued, and Maria heard something that made her stomach drop. One of the SEALs muttered, barely audible over the static, "We're surrounded by snipers." At that moment, Maria faced a decision that would define the rest of her life. Official military procedure was clear. She was assigned to defend the base, and she was not supposed to leave her position without direct orders. Abandoning her post during an attack was a court-martial offense. But fellow soldiers were in trouble, and Maria had never been one to follow rules when lives were at stake. She grabbed her rifle and additional ammunition, then began moving toward the base of her tower. Her plan was forming quickly in her mind. The enemy snipers were focused on the SEALs, which meant they might not be watching for a single person moving through the darkness. Maria had always been small and quick, advantages that served her well in combat situations. She could move through terrain that would challenge larger soldiers, and her intimate knowledge of the local area gave her options that others might not see. As she reached the base of the tower, an explosion rocked the compound. A rocket-propelled grenade had hit one of the buildings, sending debris flying in all directions. The attack was intensifying, and time was running out for the trapped SEAL team. The base commander's voice came over the radio, addressing all defensive positions. Hold your positions. Repeat, all personnel hold your positions. We have casualties and need every gun defending the perimeter. Maria looked toward the distant muzzle flashes where the SEALs were fighting for their lives. Then, she looked at her assigned position in the tower. The choice was not difficult. She began moving into the darkness, carrying her rifle and enough ammunition to start a small war. Maria Santos was going hunting, and the prey would never see her coming. The rocky terrain outside the base provided good concealment, but movement required careful planning. Every step had to be quiet. Every position had to offer cover from multiple angles. The enemy snipers were skilled professionals, and one mistake would mean death. As she moved through the shadows, Maria could hear the continuing firefight at the base behind her and the desperate battle ahead where the SEALs were surrounded. She was now caught between 2 battles, with no backup and no support except her own skills and determination. The first enemy sniper position was 300 meters ahead, concealed among a cluster of large boulders. Through her night vision scope, she could see the distinctive heat signature of a human form and the longer shape of a rifle barrel. The sniper was focused entirely on the SEAL position, unaware that death was approaching from his blind side. Maria found a stable shooting position and began to calculate range, wind, and angle. This was what she had trained for, what all those hours on the practice range had prepared her for. But training was different from reality, and reality was about to become very violent. She controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and began to squeeze the trigger. The Barrett rifle's tremendous power would announce her presence to every enemy fighter in the area, but it would also remove one threat from the battlefield. The rifle's recoil slammed against her shoulder as the massive bullet flew toward its target. 800 meters away, the enemy sniper's position erupted in a small explosion of rock and dust. Through her scope, Maria watched the heat signature disappear. One down. Immediately, the surrounding hills erupted with confused shouts and random gunfire as the enemy tried to locate the new threat. Maria was already moving to a different position, knowing that staying in one place meant certain death. The second sniper was positioned on a higher ridge, about 400 meters to the north. This one would be more difficult because the angle required shooting upward, and the target had better cover. But the enemy fighter was still focused on the SEALs and had not yet identified Maria's location. She found a new shooting position and began the careful process of lining up another shot. The night was filled with gunfire and explosions, but Maria filtered out all distractions except the image in her scope. This was pure focus, the kind of concentration that separated elite shooters from everyone else. The second shot was perfect. The enemy sniper dropped immediately, and Maria was already packing up her position before the echo of the gunshot faded away. But now the enemy knew someone was hunting them, and they were beginning to react. Radio chatter in a foreign language filled the airwaves as they tried to coordinate a response. Maria had to move faster and strike harder before they organized a proper search for her. The third target was the most dangerous yet. This sniper was positioned in a way that gave him excellent views of both the SEAL position and the surrounding area where Maria was operating. Taking him out would require getting much closer and accepting significant risk of discovery. Maria began a careful approach through a dry creek bed that provided concealment from most observation points. The rocky ground was treacherous in the darkness, but her military training had taught her to move silently through any terrain. As she got closer to the third sniper position, she could hear voices speaking in what sounded like Arabic or Pashto. There were at least 3 enemy fighters at this location, making it much more dangerous than the previous targets. Through her scope, she could see 2 men with rifles and a third person who appeared to be operating a radio. They were calling in coordinates and directing the overall attack on both the base and the surrounded SEALs. This was a command position, which made it a high-value target. Maria found a shooting position about 200 meters away and began to plan her attack. 3 targets meant 3 shots in rapid succession, with no time for careful aiming after the first shot. This would require speed and precision that few snipers could manage under combat conditions. She lined up on the radio operator first, knowing that disrupting enemy communications was critical. Then, she mentally noted the positions of the other 2 targets and began her breathing cycle. The first shot took out the radio operator instantly. Maria immediately shifted to the second target, a sniper who was turning toward her position. The second shot caught him before he could bring his rifle to bear. The third enemy fighter was scrambling for cover when Maria's final shot found its mark. 3 enemies eliminated in less than 15 seconds, but the gunfire had definitely revealed her location to other enemy positions. Bullets began hitting the rocks around her as enemy fighters adjusted their aim toward her position. Maria rolled away from her shooting spot just as a rocket-propelled grenade exploded where she had been lying seconds before. Now the real challenge began. She had eliminated 3 sniper positions, but there were more enemies in the hills, and they were all looking for her. The hunter had become the hunted, and Maria found herself in a deadly game of cat and mouse with multiple opponents who knew the terrain as well as she did. But somewhere in the darkness ahead, a group of elite American warriors was fighting for their lives, and Maria Santos had no intention of letting them down. She grabbed her rifle and began moving toward the next target, knowing that each shot brought her closer to either victory or death. The battle was just beginning. Maria pressed herself against the cold rock face as bullets whined overhead. The enemy fighters were closing in on her last known position, but she had already moved 50 meters down the ridge line. Her night vision goggles revealed at least 6 heat signatures converging on where she had fired her last shots. The radio chatter in her earpiece was becoming more desperate. The SEALs were taking heavy casualties, and the base was requesting immediate air support that was still 20 minutes out. In a firefight, 20 minutes might as well be 20 hours. She could hear Lieutenant Commander Morrison's voice cutting through the static. "Base, we have 2 wounded. Need immediate medical evacuation. We cannot hold this position much longer." "Negative, SEAL leader. All evacuation assets are committed. You need to break contact and move to alternate extraction point." Unable to comply. "We are pinned down by accurate sniper fire from multiple positions. Cannot move without taking additional casualties." Maria gritted her teeth and began moving toward the 4th sniper position. She had identified 7 enemy shooters total, each one positioned to create an overlapping field of fire that trapped the SEALs in a deadly crossfire. Taking out 3 had helped, but 4 remained active. The terrain was becoming more challenging as she moved higher into the hills. Loose rocks threatened to give away her position with every step, and the narrow paths between boulders forced her to expose herself to potential observation from multiple angles. Through her scope, she located the 4th sniper. This one was different from the others. His equipment was more sophisticated, his position was expertly chosen, and his movements suggested professional military training. This was not just another insurgent with an old rifle. This was a trained marksman, possibly a foreign advisor or mercenary. The professional sniper was positioned in a natural cave formation that provided excellent concealment and protection from return fire. Getting a clear shot would require Maria to expose herself to observation from his position and potentially from other enemy fighters in the area. But as she studied the target through her scope, Maria noticed something that changed her tactical approach. The sniper was using a radio, apparently coordinating the fire from other positions. He was not just another shooter. He was the person directing the entire ambush. Taking out the tactical coordinator would disrupt the enemy's ability to maintain their coordinated attack pattern. It was a high-value target that justified taking additional risks. Maria began a careful approach that would bring her within 300 meters of the cave position. The route required crawling through a dry stream bed that offered concealment, but also created noise as loose stones shifted under her weight. Every few meters, she stopped to listen for sounds of enemy movement. The distant gunfire from both battles continued, but she was also hearing closer sounds. Footsteps on rock, voices speaking in low tones. The enemy was definitely searching for her. As she moved closer to the target, Maria could hear the professional sniper speaking into his radio in what sounded like accented English. He was reporting to someone else, possibly a command post located away from the immediate battle area. This confirmed her assessment that she was dealing with a more sophisticated enemy than typical local fighters. Finding a shooting position required balancing concealment with the clear line of sight necessary for an accurate shot. The cave opening provided the target with excellent protection, but it also limited his mobility. Once Maria fired, he would have difficulty changing positions quickly. She settled into a prone position behind a low ridge that gave her a clear view of the cave, while keeping her silhouette below the horizon line. The range was manageable, but the target was partially concealed, requiring precise shot placement. Through her scope, Maria could see the sniper's profile as he continued his radio conversation. He was wearing modern tactical equipment and appeared to be using a high-end rifle with advanced optics. This was definitely not standard insurgent equipment. Maria controlled her breathing and began her firing sequence. The crosshairs settled on the center of the visible target area. She began her trigger squeeze, applying steady pressure while maintaining perfect sight alignment. The Barrett rifle's massive report echoed through the hills like thunder. The cave position erupted in a cloud of dust and debris as the heavy bullet struck its target. Through her scope, Maria saw the heat signature disappear immediately. But her shot had definitely revealed her position, and the response was immediate and overwhelming. Gunfire erupted from multiple locations as enemy fighters tried to suppress her position with concentrated fire. Maria rolled away from her shooting spot as bullets shattered the rocks where she had been lying. A grenade exploded nearby, sending sharp stone fragments flying through the air. One piece caught her left arm, tearing through her uniform sleeve and drawing blood. The wound was superficial, but it served as a reminder that she was operating in extremely dangerous conditions with no backup and no support. One serious mistake would mean death or capture, and neither option was acceptable. Moving to a new position required crossing open ground that was now under enemy observation. Maria waited for a lull in the gunfire, then sprinted between two large boulders. Bullets struck the ground around her feet, but she reached cover without taking additional hits. Her radio crackled with an update from the SEAL position. Base, this is SEAL Leader. Enemy fire has decreased significantly. We may have lost one of their primary shooters. Copy that, SEAL Leader. Can you attempt movement to extraction point? Negative. Still taking accurate fire from multiple positions. Need more time. Maria smiled grimly as she reloaded her rifle. The elimination of the tactical coordinator was having the desired effect. The enemy's coordinated fire was becoming less precise, giving the SEALs some breathing room. But there were still 3 active sniper positions, and the enemy ground forces were now actively hunting for her. She could hear voices getting closer as search teams moved through the hills. The 5th target was located on a ridge that provided an excellent view of both the SEAL position and the potential routes Maria might use to escape the area. Taking out this sniper would reduce the threat to the SEALs while also improving her own tactical situation. However, reaching a position where she could engage this target required moving through an area that was now under active patrol by enemy infantry. The risk was increasing with each engagement, but the alternative was allowing the SEALs to be overrun. Maria began moving through the shadows, using every piece of cover to avoid detection by the search teams. Her small size was an advantage in the rocky terrain, allowing her to use concealment that would not work for larger individuals. As she moved, she could hear the enemy fighters communicating with each other in increasingly frustrated tones. They knew someone was systematically eliminating their sniper positions, but they had not been able to locate or stop the threat. The sound of helicopters in the distance indicated that air support was finally approaching. But the SEALs needed immediate relief, not rescue that would arrive in 10 or 15 minutes. Finding an approach to the 5th target required climbing a steep section of rocky slope that exposed her to observation from multiple directions. Maria waited until enemy attention was focused elsewhere, then began a rapid ascent that brought her to a position overlooking the sniper's location. The 5th sniper was positioned behind a natural rock formation that provided excellent cover from ground-level approaches. But Maria's elevated position gave her a clear shot at the target from an angle he was not expecting. She settled into a stable shooting position and began her targeting sequence. This shot would be slightly longer range than the previous engagements, requiring careful calculation of bullet drop and wind effects. Through her scope, she could see the enemy sniper adjusting his aim toward the SEAL position. He was preparing to take a shot that could wound or kill one of the trapped Americans. There was no time for perfect shot preparation. Maria's rifle thundered again, sending another massive bullet across the dark landscape. The enemy sniper's position erupted in dust and debris. Another heat signature disappeared from her scope. The immediate response was more intense than before. The enemy had identified her general location and was directing concentrated fire at her position. Bullets were hitting all around her, and the sound of approaching footsteps indicated that ground forces were closing in rapidly. Maria grabbed her equipment and began moving immediately. Staying in any location for more than a few seconds was becoming impossible as the enemy adjusted their tactics to counter her threat. A rocket-propelled grenade exploded against the rocks where she had been positioned moments before. The concussion knocked her flat and filled her ears with a ringing sound that made radio communication difficult. But through the noise and confusion, she could hear Lieutenant Commander Morrison's voice with a note of hope. Base, enemy sniper fire has decreased significantly. We are going to attempt movement in 2 minutes. Roger, SEAL Leader. Air support is 3 minutes out. Move when ready. Maria wiped blood from a small cut on her forehead and reloaded her rifle again. 2 sniper positions remained active, plus an unknown number of enemy ground forces that were now focused entirely on finding and killing her. The 6th sniper was positioned in a location that overlooked the route the SEALs would need to use for their escape. Eliminating this threat was critical to giving the elite warriors a chance to reach safety. But getting to a position where she could engage the 6th target would require moving through an area that was now crawling with enemy soldiers. The tactical situation was becoming desperate, and Maria was running low on both ammunition and options. She could hear the helicopters getting closer, but she could also hear enemy voices very close to her current position. The search teams were tightening their net, and escape routes were becoming limited. Maria made a decision that went against all her training and experience. Instead of trying to avoid the enemy ground forces, she was going to move directly through their search area. Sometimes the most dangerous route was also the most unexpected. She began crawling through a narrow gap between two boulders, moving toward voices she could hear less than 50 meters away. Her rifle was ready, and she had her sidearm available for close-range encounters. The gap opened into a small clearing where she could see 3 enemy fighters moving through the area with weapons ready. They were searching methodically, checking every potential hiding spot. Maria remained motionless as the search team moved past her concealed position. One fighter passed within arm's reach, close enough that she could have reached out and touched his equipment. When the search team moved away, Maria continued toward the 6th sniper position. Time was running out for everyone involved in this deadly game of hide and seek. The sound of helicopter rotors was getting much louder, indicating that American air power was finally arriving on scene. But the enemy snipers still had time to inflict casualties on the escaping SEALs if they were not eliminated quickly. Through her scope, Maria located the 6th target. This sniper was positioned to cover the exact route the SEALs would need to use for their extraction. His location was well chosen and would be difficult to assault from ground level. But Maria had identified a shooting position that would give her a clear line of sight to the target. Getting there would require crossing open ground under potential enemy observation, but there were no other options. She sprinted across the exposed area, knowing that speed and surprise were her only protection. Bullets cracked overhead, but she reached cover without taking hits. The shooting position gave her an excellent view of the 6th sniper, who was focused entirely on the area where the SEALs were preparing to move. He had no idea that death was approaching from behind his position. Maria's rifle boomed again, and another enemy threat was eliminated. 6 down, 1 to go. But the last sniper would be the most dangerous, because he now knew exactly what was happening and would be ready for her approach. The final engagement would require everything she had learned about combat, survival, and precision shooting. The helicopters were almost overhead, and the SEALs were beginning their movement. Maria had one more target to eliminate before this nightmare ended, and the enemy was determined to stop her. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the night air as Maria moved through the rocky terrain toward the final sniper position. Apache gunships were circling the area, their thermal imaging systems searching for enemy targets to eliminate with devastating precision. Through her radio, she could hear the coordinated chatter between the helicopter pilots and ground forces. Apache lead, this is SEAL leader. We are beginning movement to extraction point. Request cover fire on grid coordinates 41 SMB 12345 67890. Roger, SEAL leader. We have multiple heat signatures in that area. Engaging now. The night sky erupted with tracer fire as the Apache helicopters began suppressing enemy positions with their 30mm chain guns. Explosions lit up the hills as Hellfire missiles struck suspected sniper nests and ammunition caches. But Maria knew the 7th sniper was still active because she could see his muzzle flashes through her night vision scope. He was positioned in a location that gave him excellent concealment from air attack while maintaining a clear view of the SEAL extraction route. This final target was different from the others. His position was expertly chosen for maximum effectiveness and minimum exposure. His rate of fire was controlled and accurate, suggesting significant combat experience. Most importantly, he had observed the systematic elimination of his fellow snipers and was now ready for Maria's approach. The last sniper had become the hunter, and Maria was now the prey. She could hear enemy ground forces moving through the area, their voices urgent as they tried to coordinate a response to the helicopter attack. Some were retreating toward predetermined rally points, but others were still searching for the mysterious shooter who had eliminated most of their sniper team. Maria's ammunition was running low. She had started the night with 40 rounds for her Barrett rifle and was now down to 8. Each shot had to count, because there would be no opportunity to resupply during this engagement. Finding an approach to the 7th sniper required moving through an area that was under direct observation from his position. Unlike the previous targets, this one was actively watching for threats and would see her coming unless she could create a significant distraction. The helicopter attack provided some concealment as explosions and gunfire filled the night with noise and confusion. Maria used the chaos to move closer to her target, knowing that this might be her only opportunity to get within effective range. Through her scope, she could see the final sniper's position clearly. He was using a heavy rifle similar to her own, capable of long-range precision fire. His equipment appeared to be military-grade, suggesting professional training and significant combat experience. But, as Maria studied the target, she realized something that changed her entire tactical approach. The sniper was not just watching for her approach. He was also tracking the movement of the escaping SEALs, waiting for them to expose themselves during their extraction. This meant Maria faced a time-critical decision. She could take time to set up a perfect shot, but that would give the enemy sniper opportunity to engage the SEALs as they moved to their extraction point. Or she could take a more difficult shot immediately, accepting greater risk of missing, but preventing the enemy from engaging the escaping Americans. The radio chatter from the SEAL team indicated they were beginning their movement. Apache lead, SEAL team, is moving now. We need continuous cover fire for the next 5 minutes. Roger, SEAL team. We have you covered. Maria made her decision. She settled into a prone firing position and began her target acquisition sequence. The range was long, the angle was difficult, and the target was partially concealed. But American lives were at stake, and there was no time for a perfect setup. Through her scope, she could see the enemy sniper adjusting his aim toward the area where the SEALs were moving. His finger was on the trigger, and he was beginning his firing sequence. Maria controlled her breathing and began her trigger squeeze. The crosshairs were aligned on the center of the visible target area. The rifle's weight was balanced properly, and her body position was stable. But, just as she was about to fire, the enemy sniper moved slightly, changing his position to get a better shot at the escaping SEALs. Maria had to adjust her aim, which meant starting her entire firing sequence over again. Time was running out. Through her scope, she could see the enemy sniper's rifle moving to track a target in the distance. He was about to fire at one of the escaping Americans. Maria's rifle thundered for the 7th time that night. The massive bullet crossed the dark landscape and struck the enemy sniper's position with devastating effect. Through her scope, she watched the final heat signature disappear. 7 targets eliminated. The SEAL team was clear of sniper threats. But Maria's victory celebration was interrupted by the sound of voices very close to her position. Enemy ground forces had used the sound of her rifle shot to locate her exact position, and they were approaching rapidly. She grabbed her rifle and began moving immediately, but her options were limited. The helicopter attack had illuminated much of the surrounding area, making concealment more difficult. Enemy soldiers were approaching from multiple directions, and her escape routes were becoming blocked. The radio crackled with an update from the SEAL team. Apache lead, this is SEAL leader. We are clear of the sniper threat. Beginning final movement to extraction point. Roger, SEAL leader. Outstanding work by ground support elements. Who was providing sniper elimination? There was a pause before Lieutenant Commander Morrison replied. Unknown friendly sniper. Estimate 7 enemy positions eliminated by single shooter. Maria smiled grimly as she moved through the rocks. The SEALs were safe, but she was now in serious trouble. Enemy soldiers were closing in from 3 directions, and her ammunition was almost exhausted. An explosion erupted nearby as an enemy fighter threw a grenade at her suspected position. Shrapnel whistled overhead, but Maria was already moving to a new location. She could hear the enemy soldiers calling to each other in excited voices. They knew they had the mysterious sniper trapped, and they were coordinating their assault to prevent any possibility of escape. Maria's radio suddenly came to life with a transmission that surprised her. Unknown sniper, this is Apache lead. We have observed your position and are tracking multiple hostiles converging on your location. Can you identify yourself? Maria keyed her radio. knowing that revealing her position to friendly forces might also alert nearby enemies. Apache lead, this is Staff Sergeant Santos, forward observer from base camp. I have been providing sniper support for SEAL extraction. Roger, Staff Sergeant Santos. Outstanding shooting tonight. We are going to provide cover fire for your extraction. Mark your position with infrared strobe. Maria activated her infrared marker, knowing that it would be visible to the helicopter's thermal imaging systems, but not to enemy soldiers using standard night vision equipment. Apache lead, I have visual on your marker. We count 8 hostiles within 100 meters of your position. Danger close fire mission authorized. Keep your head down. The Apache gunship's 30mm cannon began firing with devastating precision. Enemy positions erupted in explosions as high-explosive rounds eliminated the soldiers who had been closing in on Maria's location. Within 30 seconds, the immediate threat was eliminated. The area around Maria's position was clear of enemy forces, giving her the opportunity to begin moving toward friendly lines. Staff Sergeant Santos, this is Apache lead. Area is clear. We will provide cover for your movement back to base. Outstanding work tonight. Thank you, Apache lead. Moving to base now. Maria began the long journey back to the forward operating base, carrying her rifle and the knowledge that she had just participated in one of the most successful sniper operations in recent military history. 7 enemy snipers eliminated by a single shooter, allowing an elite SEAL team to escape from a deadly ambush. But as she moved through the darkness, Maria knew that her actions tonight would have consequences beyond the immediate tactical success. She had disobeyed direct orders by leaving her assigned position during an attack. Military regulations were clear about such actions, regardless of the outcome. The base was still under sporadic attack when Maria approached the perimeter. Guard posts challenged her approach, and she had to carefully identify herself to avoid being shot by friendly forces who were still expecting enemy infiltration attempts. Halt! Who goes there? Staff Sergeant Santos returning from patrol. Challenge Romeo. Advance and be recognized. Response Foxtrot. Maria approached the guard post with her rifle lowered and her hands visible. The young soldier manning the position looked relieved to see a friendly face returning safely. Sergeant, we thought you were killed when the tower was hit. Where have you been? Maria looked back at the damaged watchtower where she had been assigned to remain during the attack. A direct hit from a rocket-propelled grenade had destroyed the position completely. If she had followed orders and stayed at her post, she would have been killed instantly. I was providing support for the SEAL extraction, she replied simply. As Maria entered the base compound, she could see the damage from the night's battle. Several buildings had been hit by enemy fire, and medics were treating wounded soldiers. But the casualties could have been much worse if the attack had continued with full sniper support. Lieutenant Commander Morrison was standing near the communications center when Maria approached. His team had returned safely from their extraction, and he was providing a debrief to base command about the night's operations. When he saw Maria approaching, Morrison's expression changed to one of recognition and respect. Staff Sergeant Santos, I presume? Yes, sir. My team owes you our lives. That was some of the finest sniper work I have ever witnessed. 7 confirmed kills in a coordinated night action under enemy fire. Absolutely outstanding. Thank you, sir. Just doing my job. Morrison studied Maria's equipment and the obvious signs that she had been in heavy combat. Her uniform was torn, she had minor cuts from rock fragments, and her rifle showed evidence of extensive use. Sergeant, I need to ask you something. Did you leave your assigned position to provide support for my team? Maria straightened her shoulders and met the SEAL officer's eyes directly. Yes, sir. I did. Morrison nodded slowly. I thought so. That took considerable courage, and it saved American lives. But you understand that there will be an investigation into your actions tonight. Yes, sir. I understand. For what it's worth, Sergeant, I will be recommending you for the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Your actions tonight were extraordinary by any standard. Maria was surprised by the recommendation. Military decorations were serious matters, and the Silver Star was one of the highest awards for combat valor. But she also knew that awards did not necessarily protect against disciplinary action for disobeying orders. The base commander approached their conversation with a serious expression. Colonel William Hayes was a veteran officer who had commanded forward operating bases throughout the deployment. His reputation was fair but strict, particularly regarding military discipline. Staff Sergeant Santos, report to my office immediately. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, you are also requested to attend this meeting. Maria and Morrison followed Colonel Hayes to the command post, knowing that the next few minutes would determine Maria's military future. The successful mission was over, but the consequences were just beginning. As they walked through the damaged base compound, Maria could see other soldiers looking at her with expressions of curiosity and respect. Word had already spread about the mysterious sniper who had eliminated 7 enemy positions and saved the SEAL team. But Maria knew that military justice was not always influenced by tactical success. She had violated direct orders during combat operations, and that was a serious offense regardless of the outcome. The command post was busy with radio traffic and damage assessment reports from the night's battle. Staff officers were coordinating medical evacuations, ammunition resupply, and preparation for potential follow-up attacks. Colonel Hayes gestured for Maria and Morrison to sit down in his makeshift office. The walls were covered with tactical maps showing enemy positions and friendly force locations throughout the region. Staff Sergeant Santos, the colonel began, I need a complete account of your actions tonight, starting with your decision to leave your assigned position. Maria took a deep breath and began telling the story of the most important night of her military career. Colonel Hayes listened intently as Maria described her decision-making process and tactical actions throughout the night. His expression remained neutral, but she could see him taking notes as she explained each engagement and the reasoning behind her movements. Lieutenant Commander Morrison sat quietly during Maria's account, occasionally nodding when she described specific details that matched his team's observations from their surrounded position. When Maria finished her report, the colonel leaned back in his chair and studied both soldiers carefully. Staff Sergeant Santos, your tactical actions tonight were undoubtedly effective. 7 confirmed enemy kills and successful support for the SEAL extraction represent exceptional individual performance under combat conditions. Maria remained at attention, waiting for the inevitable, however, that she knew was coming. However, Colonel Hayes continued, you directly violated a lawful order to maintain your assigned defensive position during an active attack on this base. Military discipline requires that orders be followed regardless of individual assessment of tactical situations. Yes, sir. I understand. Do you have anything to add to your statement regarding your decision to abandon your post? Maria considered her response carefully. She could make excuses about the tactical situation or argue that her actions saved lives. But military justice was built on the principle that orders must be obeyed, especially during combat operations. Sir, I made a conscious decision to disobey orders because I believed American lives were at immediate risk and I had the capability to provide effective support. I accept full responsibility for my actions. Lieutenant Commander Morrison cleared his throat. Colonel, if I may add some perspective to this situation? Go ahead, Commander. Sir, my team was in a desperate tactical situation. Without Sergeant Santos's intervention, we would have taken significant casualties or been completely overrun. Her actions directly resulted in mission success and the preservation of American lives. I appreciate your input, Commander, but military discipline cannot be based solely on outcomes. If every soldier decided to interpret orders based on their individual assessment of tactical situations, we would have no effective command structure. Morrison leaned forward in his chair. Colonel, I have commanded elite units in some of the most dangerous combat zones in the world. What Sergeant Santos accomplished tonight represents battlefield initiative and tactical excellence that should be recognized, not punished. Hayes looked at Morrison with the expression of a senior officer who had dealt with similar situations many times before. Commander, I respect your combat experience and your assessment of Sergeant Santos's tactical performance. But I have responsibilities that extend beyond individual heroics. The discussion was interrupted by a knock on the office door. The base communications sergeant entered with an urgent message. Sir, we have priority traffic from division headquarters. They are requesting immediate report on last night's engagement and specifically asking about reports of exceptional sniper support for SEAL operations. Colonel Hayes took the message and read it quickly. His expression changed as he processed the contents. It appears that your actions last night have attracted attention at very high levels, Sergeant Santos. Division is requesting detailed information about the sniper support that enabled the successful SEAL extraction. Maria remained silent, understanding that senior military leaders were now aware of her unauthorized actions. This could make her situation much worse, depending on how the chain of command chose to respond. Hayes continued reading the message. Division is also requesting immediate recommendation for Valor Awards for all personnel involved in last night's successful operations. They specifically mention extraordinary individual initiative resulting in tactical success. Morrison smiled slightly. Colonel, it sounds like higher headquarters may have a different perspective on individual initiative than we are discussing here. Perhaps, Commander. But I still have immediate disciplinary responsibilities that cannot be ignored. Another knock interrupted their conversation. This time it was the base intelligence officer carrying a folder of reconnaissance photos and after-action reports. Sir, we have preliminary battle damage assessment from last night's engagement. The enemy lost at least 25 killed and an unknown number wounded. More significantly, we captured one of their tactical coordinators who was wounded in the Apache strikes. What has he told us? Sir, he confirmed that they had established a coordinated sniper team specifically to target the SEAL extraction. 7 shooters positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would prevent any escape from the ambush site. Hayes looked at Maria with renewed interest. 7 enemy snipers? Yes, sir. All eliminated by a single friendly shooter operating from multiple positions throughout the night. The prisoner described the systematic elimination of his sniper team as impossible and the work of a ghost. Morrison could not suppress a grin. Colonel, I believe that ghost is sitting right here in your office. The intelligence officer continued his report. Sir, the prisoner also revealed that this was part of a larger operation designed to capture or kill American Special Operations personnel. The sniper team was their primary asset for ensuring the success of the ambush. Colonel Hayes set down his pen and looked directly at Maria. Sergeant Santos, it appears that your unauthorized actions may have disrupted a significant enemy operation designed specifically to target American Special Operations Forces. Yes, sir. The tactical intelligence suggests that without your intervention, the SEAL team would have been completely eliminated and their mission would have resulted in a significant propaganda victory for enemy forces. Maria remained at attention, unsure how to respond to this new information about the broader strategic implications of her actions. Hayes picked up his radio and keyed the microphone. Base communications, this is Base Commander. I need immediate secure connection with division operations. While waiting for the connection, the colonel turned back to Maria and Morrison. Gentlemen, it appears that this situation requires consultation with higher authority before any disciplinary decisions can be made. The radio crackled to life. Base Commander, this is Division Operations. Go ahead. Division, this is Colonel Hayes at Forward Operating Base Echo. I have Staff Sergeant Maria Santos here for discussion of last night's engagement. Request guidance on handling of personnel actions related to unauthorized initiative during combat operations. Stand by, Base Commander. After several minutes, a different voice came over the radio. Maria recognized the tone of senior authority that indicated a general officer. Base Commander, this is General Patricia Williams, Division Commander. I understand you have questions about the sniper who supported the SEAL extraction last night. Yes, ma'am. Staff Sergeant Santos violated direct orders by leaving her assigned position to provide unauthorized support for the SEAL team. Colonel, I have been briefed on the tactical details of last night's engagement. 7 enemy snipers eliminated by individual initiative, successful extraction of elite special operations personnel, and disruption of a coordinated enemy operation targeting American forces. Yes, ma'am. All confirmed. Colonel Hayes, let me be perfectly clear about Division's position on this matter. Staff Sergeant Santos demonstrated exactly the kind of battlefield initiative and tactical excellence that we need from our soldiers. Her actions saved American lives and achieved significant tactical success. Maria felt a sense of relief, but She knew that general officers could change their positions quickly based on political or administrative considerations. General Williams continued, I am directing that Staff Sergeant Santos be immediately recommended for the Silver Star for gallantry in action. Additionally, I want a complete after-action report on her tactical methods for inclusion in our training programs. Colonel Hayes straightened in his chair. Yes, ma'am. I will prepare the award recommendation immediately. Colonel, I also want to make sure you understand something important. Military discipline is crucial, but so is recognizing when individual soldiers demonstrate exceptional courage and tactical skill under combat conditions. Sergeant Santos represents the best of American military capabilities. Understood, ma'am. Furthermore, I am recommending Sergeant Santos for immediate selection to Advanced Sniper School and potential assignment to Special Operations Support Units. Her demonstrated capabilities suggest she could make significant contributions to high-priority missions. Maria was shocked by this unexpected development. Advanced training and special operations assignments were career opportunities that few soldiers ever received. Morrison leaned over and whispered, Sergeant, I think your military career just took a very positive turn. General Williams concluded the radio conversation. Colonel Hayes, ensure that Staff Sergeant Santos understands that her actions last night represent the finest traditions of American military service. Individual initiative in support of fellow soldiers is exactly what we expect from our warriors. Yes, ma'am. I will ensure she receives appropriate recognition. After the radio conversation ended, Colonel Hayes looked at Maria with a completely different expression. The disciplinary discussion had been replaced by administrative planning for award recommendations and career advancement opportunities. Staff Sergeant Santos, it appears that your unauthorized actions have been redefined as exceptional individual initiative. Congratulations on what may be the most successful individual sniper operation in recent military history. Thank you, sir. Commander Morrison, I believe you mentioned earlier that you wanted to recommend Sergeant Santos for the Silver Star? Yes, sir. Based on her performance last night, she deserves recognition at the highest levels. Hayes began writing on an official form. I will prepare the award recommendation today and forward it through appropriate channels. Sergeant Santos, you should know that Silver Star recipients are among the most highly regarded soldiers in the American military. Maria was still processing the rapid change in her situation. Less than an hour ago, she had been facing potential court-martial for disobeying orders. Now she was being recommended for one of the military's highest decorations for valor. Sir, may I ask about my current assignment status? You will remain at this base until the award process is completed and until division determines your next assignment. Based on General Williams's comments, I suspect you will be receiving some very interesting career opportunities. Morrison stood up and extended his hand to Maria. Sergeant, my team, and I will never forget what you did for us last night. You have the respect and gratitude of every Navy SEAL who knows about this operation. Thank you, sir. I was just doing what needed to be done. That's exactly the right attitude, Sergeant. Individual soldiers taking initiative to support fellow Americans is what wins wars. As Morrison prepared to leave, he turned back to Maria with a serious expression. Sergeant, I hope you understand that what you accomplished last night was extraordinary by any standard. 7 enemy snipers eliminated by individual action during a coordinated night engagement is the kind of performance that becomes military legend. After Morrison left, Colonel Hayes continued working on the award paperwork. Sergeant Santos, I want you to understand something important about military recognition. The Silver Star is not just an award. It is recognition that you demonstrated exceptional courage and tactical skill under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. Yes, sir. More importantly, this recognition will follow you throughout your military career and beyond. Silver Star recipients are remembered and respected wherever they go. Maria thought about her father back in Texas and how proud he would be to learn that his daughter had received such recognition for her military service. The hunting skills he had taught her in the early morning mist had led to this moment of recognition for extraordinary service to her country. Sir, what happens next? You will continue your normal duties while the award process moves through channels. You will also be interviewed by intelligence personnel about your tactical methods and observations from last night's engagement. Hayes signed the award recommendation and placed it in his outgoing message file. Sergeant Santos, dismissed. And congratulations on a truly exceptional night of service to your fellow soldiers. As Maria left the command post, she could see other soldiers looking at her with expressions of respect and curiosity. Word of her actions was spreading throughout the base, and her reputation was already being transformed from unknown soldier to military hero. But Maria knew that the real measure of success was not awards or recognition. The real success was that 7 elite American warriors had returned safely to their families because she had been willing to risk everything to support them when they needed it most. The sun was beginning to rise over the Afghan mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that reminded Maria of Texas sunrises. It had been an extraordinary night, but her war was far from over. 3 months later, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stood at attention in front of a crowd of military personnel and dignitaries at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Silver Star ceremony was being conducted by General Patricia Williams herself, with representatives from every branch of the military in attendance. Maria's parents had traveled from Texas for the ceremony. Her father, weathered from years of ranch work, stood with tears in his eyes as he watched his daughter receive one of the military's highest honors for valor. Her mother clutched a folded American flag that had been presented to the family in recognition of Maria's service. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison was also present, along with several members of his SEAL team. They had specifically requested permission to attend the ceremony to honor the soldier who had saved their lives during that desperate night in Afghanistan. General Williams approached the podium to read the citation. The Silver Star is awarded to Staff Sergeant Maria Santos for gallantry in action against an armed enemy of the United States while assigned to Forward Operating Base Echo, Afghanistan, on November 15th. The crowd fell silent as the general continued reading the official description of Maria's actions. Staff Sergeant Santos demonstrated extraordinary heroism and tactical excellence when she voluntarily exposed herself to enemy fire to provide sniper support for a surrounded special operations team. Operating alone and under intense enemy pressure, she systematically eliminated 7 enemy sniper positions during a coordinated night engagement, enabling the successful extraction of American special operations personnel. Maria remained at attention, but her mind drifted back to that night in the Afghan hills. She could still remember the sound of bullets whining overhead and the weight of her rifle as she moved from position to position. Most clearly, she remembered the voices of the trapped SEALs calling for help over the radio. Staff Sergeant Santos's actions directly resulted in the preservation of American lives and the disruption of a significant enemy operation. Her demonstrated courage, tactical skill, and dedication to fellow soldiers represent the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon herself, her unit, and the United States Army. General Williams stepped forward and pinned the Silver Star to Maria's dress uniform. The medal's silver star surrounded by a wreath of laurel leaves represented recognition that few soldiers ever received. As the general stepped back and saluted, the entire crowd erupted in applause. After the ceremony, Maria was surrounded by family, friends, and fellow soldiers offering congratulations. But the person she most wanted to see was Lieutenant Commander Morrison, who had waited patiently for the crowd to thin before approaching. Sergeant Santos, or should I say, Silver Star recipient Santos. Congratulations on well-deserved recognition. Thank you, sir. I am just glad your team made it home safely. Morrison smiled and shook his head. Sergeant, you need to understand something. What you did that night was not just about saving my team. You demonstrated individual courage and tactical excellence that has become legendary within the special operations community. I appreciate that, sir. Maria, I have something to tell you that you may not know. The intelligence we gathered from that mission led to the disruption of 3 additional planned attacks on American forces. Your actions that night saved many more lives than just my team. This was the first time Maria had heard about the broader impact of the mission. Military intelligence operations were often classified, and individual soldiers rarely learned about the strategic implications of their tactical actions. Morrison continued. More importantly, your sniper techniques and tactical methods have been incorporated into advanced training programs for special operations personnel. Other soldiers are learning from your example. Maria's father approached and introduced himself to Morrison. Commander, I want to thank you for speaking up for my daughter during her award process. We are very proud of her service. Sir, your daughter's actions that night represent everything that is best about American military service. She risked her life to save fellow soldiers, and she did it with skill and courage that few people possess. As the conversation continued, Maria noticed a civilian approaching who seemed familiar. He was older, perhaps in his 60s, with the bearing of a retired military officer. When he got closer, she realized who he was. Staff Sergeant Santos, I am retired General Robert McKenzie, former commander of Special Operations Command. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your Silver Star and to discuss some potential opportunities for your continued military service. Maria came to attention, but the general gestured for her to relax. Sergeant, I have reviewed the after-action reports from your engagement in Afghanistan. Your performance that night suggests capabilities that could be extremely valuable in specialized assignments. Thank you, sir. I am here to discuss the possibility of your selection for advanced training programs that could lead to assignment with elite military units. Are you interested in continuing your military service in a more specialized capacity? This was the opportunity that General Williams had mentioned during the radio conversation 3 months ago. Maria had wondered if the offer was serious or just words spoken in the enthusiasm of the moment. Yes, sir. I would be honored to serve in any capacity where I can contribute to military operations. General McKenzie handed her a folder containing official documents. These are applications for several advanced training programs, including the Special Operations Sniper Course and the Military Intelligence Advanced Individual Training Program. Both would prepare you for assignment to specialized units. Maria accepted the folder, understanding that this represented a potential career path that few soldiers ever had the opportunity to pursue. Elite military assignments were normally reserved for personnel with extensive experience and exceptional performance records. Sir, may I ask why these opportunities are being offered? Sergeant Santos, exceptional performance under combat conditions is rare. Individual soldiers who demonstrate tactical excellence, courage, and the ability to operate independently under pressure are exactly what our elite units need. Morrison nodded in agreement. Maria, specialized units are always looking for personnel who have proven themselves in actual combat situations. Your performance that night demonstrated exactly the kind of capabilities they need. General McKenzie continued. Furthermore, your tactical methods and decision-making processes under pressure suggest natural abilities that can be developed through advanced training. We believe you could make significant contributions to high-priority military operations. Maria looked at her parents, who were beaming with pride at their daughter's recognition and the opportunities being presented to her. Her father nodded encouragingly, understanding that this could be the beginning of an extraordinary military career. Sir, I would be honored to apply for these training programs. Excellent. The application process will require additional interviews and evaluation, but your combat record and this Silver Star provide strong foundation for selection. As the conversation concluded, Maria realized that her actions on that desperate night in Afghanistan had changed the entire trajectory of her military career. What had started as a split-second decision to help fellow soldiers had led to recognition, career opportunities, and the chance to serve at the highest levels of military operations. 6 months later, Maria graduated at the top of her class from the Special Operations Sniper Course. Her instructors noted that her combat experience and proven tactical abilities gave her advantages that most students did not possess. The psychological pressure and technical challenges of elite training were manageable for someone who had already performed under the ultimate pressure of life and death combat. Her first assignment was to a classified special operations unit that conducted high-priority missions in denied areas around the world. The specific details of her new responsibilities were secret, but Maria knew she would be supporting the same kind of elite warriors she had helped that night in Afghanistan. Lieutenant Commander Morrison, now promoted to commander, served as a reference during her selection process. His recommendation letter described Maria as one of the finest combat soldiers I have encountered in 15 years of special operations service. On the anniversary of the Afghanistan engagement, Maria received a letter from the wife of one of the SEALs she had helped rescue. The letter described how grateful the family was that her husband had returned safely from that deployment and was able to be present for the birth of their second child. Maria kept that letter in her personal file as a reminder that military service was ultimately about protecting the people and values that made America worth defending. Awards and recognition were meaningful, but the real measure of success was the difference made in the lives of fellow Americans. Her military career continued to advance through specialized assignments and continued education. Each new challenge built upon the foundation of tactical skills and mental toughness she had developed during her early military service. But Maria never forgot the lessons learned during that long night in the Afghan hills. Individual soldiers making difficult decisions under pressure could have impacts far beyond their immediate tactical situation. The willingness to risk everything for fellow Americans was what separated ordinary service members from extraordinary ones. Years later, when Maria had achieved senior rank and was responsible for training new soldiers, she would tell them about the night she defied orders to save a trapped SEAL team. Not as an example of disobedience, but as an illustration of the kind of moral courage and tactical excellence that defined the best traditions of American military service. Military discipline is important, she would tell her students, but there are moments when individual soldiers must make decisions based on their assessment of what is right, not just what is ordered. Those moments define character and determine whether we live up to the trust placed in us by our fellow Americans. The Silver Star remained the most visible symbol of Maria's military achievements, but she knew that the real significance of that night was not personal recognition. The real significance was that 7 American warriors had returned safely to their families because one soldier was willing to risk everything to ensure they came home. Maria Santos had begun her military service as an unknown soldier from a small Texas town. Through courage, skill, and dedication to fellow Americans, she had become an example of everything that was best about military service. Her story became part of the training curriculum at multiple military schools, inspiring new generations of soldiers to understand that individual actions could have profound impacts on the lives of others. But, for Maria, the most important recognition came not from generals or politicians, but from the simple knowledge that she had done everything possible to protect fellow Americans when they needed it most. That knowledge sustained her through the remainder of her military career and beyond, a reminder that the greatest honor was not receiving awards, but earning the trust and respect of fellow warriors who depended on each other in the most dangerous places on earth. The night she defied orders to save a surrounded SEAL team had changed everything. From unknown soldier to Silver Star recipient to elite special operations personnel, Maria's journey demonstrated that individual courage and tactical excellence could overcome any obstacle. Most importantly, it showed that the willingness to sacrifice for fellow Americans was what made military service more than just a job. It was a calling that demanded the very best from those who answered it. In the end, Maria Santos had proven that heroes were not born from extraordinary circumstances, but from ordinary people making extraordinary choices when others depended on them. Her legacy lived on in every soldier who heard her story and understood that individual actions could make the difference between victory and defeat, between life and death, between coming home and never seeing family again. The hunt that began in the Texas Hill Country had led to the mountains of Afghanistan and beyond, where Maria Santos became living proof that American soldiers would never abandon each other, no matter the risk, no matter the cost, no matter the odds. That promise was what made her country worth defending and her service worthy of the Silver Star that represented the gratitude of a nation.